1:20 p.m., Secretary of State Hillary Clinton arrives in Mexico today. She meets with Mexican President Felipe Calderón.
And Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is in Mexico right now for meetings with Mexican President Calderón to address that growing violence stemming from cross-border drug trade.
MSNBC military analyst and retired U.S. Army General Barry McCaffrey. He's also the former director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy. General, we saw the administration make a big effort yesterday to suggest that they're doing a lot, and yet President Obama has asked for no new troops, no new legislation, and no new major federal funding. Are we doing enough?
Well, look, the good news is the president's directly engaged, and the Secretary of State's going down there, and the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Attorney General. So for the first time in years, we have a coherent group of people, senior leadership, trying to engage on the issue.
But you don't think it's enough people?
Oh, no, of course not. You know, the Mexican gang members may be more than 100,000 in the 5 major cartels. We're sending 16 new DEA agents to the border, 38 ATF guys. We just sent 17,000 troops headed toward Afghanistan. So in a comparative sense, we're not focused on it yet.
How real is this threat? It is being driven by this insatiable appetite for drugs in America, and at the same time, we're shipping our guns down to Mexico.
Well, no question. We owe the Mexicans better control of our own border. The packaged pallet loads of $100 bills are going south into Mexico, corrupting their society. And some 90% of the weapons, automatic weapons I might add, are coming out of the United States and Mexican criminals. Now, having said that, Mexico has other problems, one of which they're trying to downplay the magnitude of this problem for a variety of reasons. One, economic. They don't want tourism to stop.
Yeah. Is this spilling over yet into our U.S. borders? I've spoken with a number of mayors in border states. They don't yet see it. But could it be a real threat to our national security?
Of course it's spilling over. In Phoenix, there's some 300 home invasions. So the notion that it's criminal on criminal and therefore it doesn't count when we're seeing dozens of vital cities in America that are consumed by Mexican drug crime. It's not the same as Juarez and Tijuana and Nuevo Laredo, but it's clearly the major factor in domestic crime.
And that's why Hillary Clinton is there today, why we see the Attorney General going, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and even the President going.
Yeah, good news.
Yeah. General Barry McCaffrey, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Tune in at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Andrea Mitchell Reports, because Andrea is in Mexico. She's covering Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's trip. She's going to anchor her show today from Mexico City and have the very latest.
Good day, I'm Andrea Mitchell, live in Mexico City, where Hillary Clinton will be meeting today with Mexico's President Felipe Calderón, talking about the escalating drug violence, which has turned the Texas border, the border with the United States, Texas and Arizona, into a near war zone. Today on Capitol Hill, Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano says that the U.S. must take action to stop the violence from spilling into the states. President Obama has announced that he is sending more Border Patrol troops to the border to try to do something about the escalating drug violence. We're joined now by Pedro Sevcek from Telemundo, the anchor of Telemundo, who in fact interviewed Hillary Clinton last night before she left for Mexico City, where she now is. Pedro, thanks so much for joining us. Let me show our viewers what she said in response to your question about the U.S. responsibility for this escalating violence. Let's listen.
Of course, there are difficult problems that we both face. We're going to try to be helpful in, stopping the flow of guns and trying to reduce the demand for the flow of drugs. We recognize that we have a responsibility. The Obama administration, neither the president nor I, at all believe that this is only somebody else's problem. We think it is a mutual challenge.
And in fact, she took the same tack, Pedro, on the plane en route down. Our producer, Libby Least, reports that she was very critical of the U.S. for not doing enough in the past. Clearly, that's an easier hit. That's the Bush administration. But also saying that Americans have to take co-responsibility for what is going on. Is that going to be music to the ears of Mexico's president today?
Yes, absolutely. But it's a very hard path for the U.S. government with the consumers in this country. And as long as you have consumers, you will have people willing to kill and do horrible things to sell to those consumers. It's going to be very, very hard to show results, because on the other side they say we put the corpses and they put the noses. So it's a very complicated situation, but as you say, it's going to be music in the government of Mexico ears.
That's what an expression. They put the corpses and you've got the noses for the cocaine, obviously. How do these cartels work? How have they become so omnipotent and so omnipresent in terms of, in these towns, they really are the local government in some of these places?
No, well, but you're talking about very, very small towns. They are not the government, basically, in any important place in Mexico, but they have a lot of power, and power comes hand in hand with money. They basically move, I would say, around $10, $11 billion in profit every year. Obviously, you can do a lot of things with that. And when you have people, for example, a policeman in Mexico making $300 a month, and somebody comes and say, you can make that in a couple of days, or you can make that just in 1 hour if you look the other way. You know, it's very tempting. Unfortunately, for years and years and years, consumption has been basically the engine of this situation. And when you have millions of people willing to pay, you have obviously billions of dollars moving in this situation in the direction of criminals.
Pedro Secek from Hialeah, Florida, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your interview with Hillary Clinton. And we'll be interviewing tonight as she continues her meetings here and meets with President Calderon as we speak.
Any minute now, we're going to see Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. She is going to speak live from Mexico about the drug wars going on there. She has just wrapped up a meeting with President Felipe Calderon. You are watching MSNBC.
Will the U.S. be sending troops to the border to stop the bloodshed on the border? Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is in Mexico, and she will be speaking any minute, and we will bring that to you live. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is meeting, or has met, with Mexican President Felipe Calderon on a plane, actually, to Mexico. Said the United States bears much of the blame for the current violence. This is in part what she said. How could anyone conclude differently? Our insatiable demand for illegal drugs fuels the drug trade. Our inability to prevent weapons from being illegally smuggled across the border to arm these criminals causes the deaths of police officers, soldiers, and civilians. Well, TJ Bonner is the president of the National Border Patrol. TJ, we're waiting on the Secretary of State to make some more comments as she is visiting Mexico. But what do you think of her comments? A lot of people surprised to hear that from her, that frankness from her.
Well, I think that she makes a valid point. The U.S. is the primary user of illegal drugs in the world, but we have been for a number of years. And before the Mexicans were supplying, the Mexican cartels were supplying narcotics, it was the Colombians, and before that, other nations.
It is day 2 of Secretary Clinton's visit here, her diplomatic approach, her outreach to Mexico. The Secretary is pushing for the U.S. and Mexico to work together to fight the escalating drug war. In an interview with us last night, she went further than any previous U.S. official has in saying that the United States shares some of the blame for the drug violence because of America's insatiable demand for illegal drugs.
It is drug demand in the United States which drives the drugs north across our border, and we have assault weapons and other guns coming south illegally to arm the drug gangs against the Mexican army and police. That's why we say it is a shared responsibility.
More of my interview with Secretary Clinton coming up this hour.
It's not over until the lady in the pantsuit says it is.